Today we're gonna systematically test the Mi Band 8. Now this is a super popular smartwatch since it's really beautiful at a very affordable price point. However, the question remains, are the health and sports measurements it takes actually any good? Well, in this comprehensive review, my aim is to help you decide if the measurements of the Mi Band 8 are good enough for your specific use case. As we dive into this detailed analysis, we'll be comparing the Mi Band 8 with various reference devices to give you an in-depth understanding of its capabilities, and specifically we'll be focusing on two key aspects of the smartwatch: the heart rate tracking and the sleep stage tracking. Now these are essential features for the fitness enthusiast and also those seeking to improve their overall well-being. So let's not waste any more time and explore what the Mi Band 8 has in store for you. Now before moving on, I should tell you that I almost didn't make this video because it turned out to be much more challenging than I initially thought. This is because an international version of the Mi Band 8 wasn't yet available, at least not one I could find, so I had to get a Chinese version. Now the Chinese and international versions are usually very similar in terms of hardware, but the software has subtle differences. Now for me, this small difference had a big consequence, namely that I couldn't connect my Mi Band 8 to Strava, and Strava is my main way of getting to the heart rate data of the Mi Band. Now luckily I did find a way to access the heart rate data on the Mi Band 8 at a 5-minute resolution, so not great but okay, which is enough to draw some general conclusions. But normally I would like to go into more detail in the heart rate, which isn't possible for now. Therefore this will be an initial review and a full review will follow in the future. Now as your regular viewers will know, I typically do not list the specs of watches since you can find those on the website of the manufacturer. However, I do want to note one thing, namely the fact that the design of the Mi Band 8 reminds me a lot of the Fitbit Luxe. Now, I'm not saying that Xiaomi directly copied the design, but I do think these devices look very similar. But that's just a side note, since it probably doesn't matter much to you if you're interested in this device. You just want to know how the Mi Band 8 performs, so let's get to it. And I want to start off by looking at the heart rate measurement performance. And I want to start off by looking at the easiest activity, which isn't even an activity at all, namely tracking my heart rate during one day and also one night of sleep while I wasn't doing any sports. Now for the vast majority of these measurements, I was completely at rest, either laying down or sitting, and this plot provides an overview of those results. Specifically, I'm comparing the heart rate measurements of the Mi Band 8 against the Polar H10 ECG chest strap, which can generally record my heart rate very accurately. Now each dot in this plot is a single heart rate measurement, with along the horizontal axis the value according to the Polar H10 ECG chest strap, and on the vertical axis the value according to the Mi Band 8. Now the closer the points are to the blue line, the better the agreement, and the darker black the color, the more dots that there are. And you see something quite unexpected here. We see there are quite some points above the blue line. Now this means that in these moments the Mi Band 8 detected a too high heart rate. We see that the Mi Band quite often detected a heart rate of around 90 beats per minute, sometimes when my heart rate was in actuality half that at about 45 beats per minute, as you can see right here. So my heart rate was about 45 beats per minute, but the Mi Band detected 90 beats per minute. But here it's actually very important to take a look at the day and the night themselves to get a feeling for why this artifact is happening. And here we can see the results for the night of sleep. Now along the horizontal axis we have the time, and my heart rate is along the vertical axis. In blue-green, I plotted my heart rate according to the Polar H10 ECG chest strap, and in red is my heart rate as recorded by the Mi Band 8. And as you can see, there was generally a good agreement between the Mi Band 8 and the ECG reference, but interestingly, there were two moments where the Mi Band 8 detected a way too high heart rate. We can see that in the beginning of the night right here, but what I find more interesting is this section right here near the end of the night, where the Mi Band 8 detected double the heart rate I actually had. Now this is something we've seen before with smartwatches, where they detect either half or double the actual heart rate. And this makes some sense if you think about it. They're taking the raw heart rate signal, which is potentially noisy, so maybe the Mi Band shifted on my wrist here, and it has some periodic effect. So each time my heart beats, there's an increase in the signal, for instance. So you can imagine something similar to the way we usually depict a radio wave. So this periodic signal, and they try to match it to some heart rate in real time with the limited processing of a smartwatch. So the algorithm might be quite simple, something like a Fourier transform, which basically means translating the signal to frequencies, and I can imagine if the signal is noisy enough, it might just detect half or double the heart rate instead. But okay, for most of the night it looks good, and I actually wore a second Mi Band at the same time. And those results are displayed right here. So this is a second Mi Band worn during the same night, and this didn't show these issues. You can see that in this case, the red line of the Mi Band 8 generally follows along really nicely with the general trend of the ECG chest strap. So it does appear that the fit of the Mi Band and maybe some random shifts during the night really influence the quality of the signal. But let's now see how the Mi Band performed during the day. And you can see those results right here. And as you can see here, the Mi Band 8 tended to detect a higher heart rate signal than the ECG chest strap. So the red line is often higher than the blue-green line. Especially here in the beginning of this session where I took a nap, you can see that the Mi Band 8 again detected about double the heart rate. And you can see that for most of the time, the Mi Band 8 detected a heart rate of about 80 to 90 BPM, I would say, whereas the ECG chest strap detected a heart rate of about 70 to 80 BPM. What I also find interesting is that in these two moments, right here and right here, where my heart rate dropped for a bit, the Mi Band did agree that my heart rate decreased in these moments. So here it was quite accurate, but in other moments it detected a too high heart rate. Now I don't have data for the second Mi Band here since there are issues getting the full data set for this Mi Band. But so far my feelings about the Mi Band's heart rate tracking are a bit mixed. One Mi Band did quite good for one night, whereas the other one struggled a bit, at least for part of the time. And then during the day, the Mi Band for some reason often detected a too high heart rate, so I'm not sure what's going on here. Next, let's take a look at how the Mi Band 8 performed during exercise. And I want to start off with one of the easiest types of exercises for a watch to track, cycling indoors. And we'll be looking at just a total of 2 interval spinning sessions. Now the reason we're just looking at 2 is because the data extraction wasn't that good. I could only get out these 2 sessions and somehow I couldn't get out most of the data. Still, I think the results are informative. And here we can see an overview of the accuracy over these rides. Now cycling indoors involves very little movement or tension on my arms and will therefore produce less noise. And you will see that there are very few points here. And this is because I only had access to the heart rate data at 5-minute intervals. And as you can see, the points are close to the blue line, at least in general, but there are some points away from it. Again, in this case, it is also most informative to take a look at the individual training sessions. And here you can see the results for the first ride with the Mi Band 8 in red and the ECG chest strap in blue-green. And we generally actually see a good agreement between both devices. The Mi Band generally follows along quite well with the patterns of the ECG chest strap and it catches all of the different intervals, so that's quite good. And we see more or less the same thing for this second spinning session, so that's really good. Now in this case, the red line is slightly shifted compared to the blue one, but this might just be a data artifact because of the rounding up to every 5 minutes. So the heart rate might have been measured in between those 5 minutes, and then I had to round it to the full 5 minutes, and that's why it shifted. So overall, I would say that for spinning, it looks quite good. Now, normally I would next show you an overview of many of the devices I tested in the past, some overview like this, where I rank the watches from worst to best. So in this case, the further to the right and the higher devices, the better is its agreement with the ECG chest strap. And if I make that overview and display the Mi Band 8 in red right here, we do see it doesn't do that well compared to other watches. But I don't think it's fair to rely on that comparison in this case, since because of the shift we just saw and other issues with the data resolution, the Mi Band 8 actually performs much better than this plot would indicate. Now I could adapt my computer code to try and account for the shift, but I don't think it's worth the effort, since we're still looking at very few data points and I'm not sure how Xiaomi actually calculates the average over the 5 minutes. We'll have to wait for the international version to come out so I can do a full test and get access to the full resolution data. Next, let's now take a look at a more difficult exercise for a watch to track, cycling outside. Now, cycling outside increases the tension on my arms because I have to hold onto the handlebars, and there's also much more movement and bumpiness, making it much harder for the watch to get a clean heart rate signal. Now, I tested the Mi Band 8 for a total of 6 bike rides. Let's take a look. And here you can see an overview of that accuracy. Again, we do see quite some points close to the blue line, but there's now also more points below it, indicating that the Mi Band 8 in these moments detected a too low heart rate. However, again, because we have so few data points, it's very important to look at the individual bike rides. And here we can see the first bike ride with again the Mi Band 8 in red. And indeed here we see there are some moments where the Mi Band 8 tends to undershoot the real heart rate I had. You can see right here, for instance, it detected a too low heart rate, and also right here the heart rate was lower than I actually had. But again, this is slightly harder to judge because we can only get the heart rate in 5-minute intervals. And that's basically what we see for all bike rides. The Mi Band 8 does seem to detect a too low heart rate sometimes, but it's a bit difficult to be sure because of the limited resolution of the data. Still, I do feel comfortable saying that on me at least, the Mi Band appears to do significantly better for cycling indoors compared to cycling outside. Next, let's take a look at another type of exercise, which is actually sometimes easier and sometimes harder for a watch to track, running outside. Now this involves quite a lot of bumpiness as well, but interestingly I've seen that some watches seem to do quite well for this exercise, whereas others struggle a lot. So let's see if the Mi Band 8 is any good. Unfortunately, the data export I could get from Xiaomi only had a single run for which it provided the data, even though I actually used my Mi Band 8 for several runs. Still, the results are quite interesting. And here we have those results. And as I mentioned before, we only have very few data points because we're looking at a single run, but still the agreement looks quite good. But let's also take a look at the individual run to see what it actually looked like over time. And here you can see that individual run, where again I plotted the results for the ECG chest strap in blue-green and the results for the Mi Band in red. Luckily, we indeed see that most of the patterns of the Mi Band nicely match up with the patterns of the ECG chest strap. Again, the resolution of the Mi Band data is low, so it's difficult to make any definitive conclusions, but generally it doesn't look so bad. It actually looks quite good, honestly. There's a quite good agreement between both devices, so that's at least the first good sign that the Mi Band 8 performs decently for running outside. Next, let's take a look at one of the most difficult exercises for a watch to track, namely weightlifting. Now, for weightlifting, it's not the movement that makes it hard for the watch to track your heart rate, but this exercise is much more difficult because of the increased tension on my arm and on my wrist, making it much harder for the watch to get a clean heart rate signal. However, first a quick side note. If you're interested in the latest updates on the wearables I'm testing, I'm planning to start back up with my newsletter and posting more off-the-cuff things on my Instagram and my YouTube Shorts channel. So if you're interested in any of those are linked below. Of course, you would also make me really happy and it would help my efforts if you subscribe to this YouTube channel. But of course, this is totally up to you. Now, enough self-promotion. Let's take a look at the performance during weightlifting, which I tested during a total of just 2 training sessions for which a Xiaomi actually provided data export. Again, I had much more data, but this is all I could get. And here we have an overview of that performance. And again, we're working with very few data points, but we'll make the best of it. The general pattern here is quite clear. Most data points appear to be below the blue line, indicating that the Mi Band 8 quite often detected a way too low heart rate. But again, we get an even more complete impression if we look at the individual training sessions. So let's take a look. And here we can see the results for the first weightlifting session. And we indeed see that the Mi Band 8 never detected the peaks in my heart rate. So you can clearly see the peaks of my heart rate in blue right here. So each time I do a set, my heart rate increases. And the ECG chest strap nicely picks up on this. And the Mi Band doesn't appear to be able to pick up on this. Again, it's tricky to make any final conclusions, but it does seem as though the times that the data was recorded at the exact moment I was doing a set, as you can see, for instance, right here, but also right here, that the Mi Band wasn't able to pick up on the peak in my heart rate. In general, none of the Mi Band's measurements go above 112, 113 BPM, whereas in reality, in some moments, my heart rate was close to 130 BPM. So it never appears to have picked up on the peaks in my heart rate, though again, these are preliminary conclusions. And for the second weightlifting session for which I could get the data, we see more or less the same thing. The Mi Band 8's data follows along with the rough patterns in my heart rate, but it cannot pick up on the peaks in my heart rate, though again, I have to do a full review once I get the international version. Now, as you just saw, weightlifting doesn't look too good for the Mi Band 8. It just doesn't seem to be able to detect the peaks in my heart rate. However, this is actually true for most watches, so I'm not going to hold it against the Mi Band. Summarizing the results, I would say that for cycling indoors, the Mi Band 8 actually did quite well, but the moment I switched to cycling outside, it started to struggle a lot. Running, on the other hand, seemed okay based on the quick test I was able to do, but weightlifting wasn't a strong point of the Mi Band 8. However, what I found most surprising is that sometimes the Mi Band even seems to struggle with detecting my heart rate at rest. Now, I do tend to get quite low heart rates when I'm resting, so I'm not sure if it just had trouble detecting heart rates below 50 or even 40 beats per minute, but no matter the cause, it did show some weird artifacts sometimes. I do have to mention again that I could only export the data at a relatively low resolution, so I cannot be 100% sure that Xiaomi isn't doing something funky with the data to get it to that lower resolution. Now, once I get access to an international version of the Mi Band, I'll hopefully be able to redo that testing. But okay, assuming that all the conclusions we've drawn so far are correct, how would I judge the overall quality of the heart rate tracking of the Mi Band 8? Well, given now that there's some indication that it does well for indoor cycling and running, I'm inclined to give it 3 or even 3.5 out of 5 stars for the heart rate tracking. But be aware that here I am taking into account the lower price point of the Mi Band 8. But okay, let's now move on to another important feature of the Mi Band 8, the sleep stage tracking. Like most modern smartwatches, the Mi Band 8 will track your sleep, and it will do that in some detail, providing you with your different sleep stages, so deep sleep, light sleep, and REM sleep, and it will of course also tell you when you are awake. To check if the Mi Band 8 can detect my sleep stages, I'll compare it to an EEG device called the Dream 2 that can actually measure my brainwaves and has been shown to be relatively reliable at sleep stage tracking. And here I show an overview of the sleep test results. Now, for getting an overall impression of how well the Mi Band 8 performs, the Dream 2 should likely be good enough. However, the gold standard would be polysomnography, which you would also like to try on the Mi Band 8 in the future. Now, on top here are the sleep stages as recorded by the EEG device, and on the left are the sleep stages as recorded by the Mi Band 8. Now, I wore both the EEG device and my two Mi Band 8s to bed for 5 nights, and we will see how close the predictions of the Mi Band 8 are to those of the EEG device. Now, each column here sums to 100%, meaning that we can see what percentage of each of the sleep stages according to the Dream 2 was predicted as each sleep stage by the Mi Band. And if they perfectly agree, all values on the diagonal should be 100%. Now here I'll focus on the Mi Band 8 I was also using as my main example in the heart rate tracking, but as you will see later, the results for the second Mi Band 8 I wore at the same time were very similar. First of all, we see that only about 16% of what the EEG device detected as being deep sleep was also detected as being deep sleep by the Mi Band 8. So that's actually really bad. I've not seen many devices perform that poorly. It mostly predicted what was deep sleep according to the Dream 2 headband as light sleep instead at about 58%. And it even predicted more of what was deep sleep according to the EEG device as REM sleep at about 26% compared to 16% that it predicted as deep sleep. Now looking at the individual nights will help us understand that even better. And here we see the results for the first night I wanted to share with you. On top are the sleep stages as recorded by the Dream 2 EEG headband, with along the horizontal axis the time and my sleep stages on the vertical axis. And on the bottom we have a similar plot, but now for the Mi Band 8. And now in purple, I highlighted the deep sleep as recorded by the EEG device. And as you can see, there's very poor overlap between the Mi Band 8 and the EEG device. Only a really small part of what the Mi Band 8 detected as being deep sleep was also detected as deep sleep by the EEG device. You can actually see these really short repeating segments right here according to the Mi Band 8, which sort of look like sleep cycles where it goes from deep sleep to light sleep to REM sleep. And this repeats like 6 times for the first 2/3 of the night. And this is actually not something you would expect from a normal sleep pattern. I've actually done close to 100 professional PSG measurements on myself over the last years, and none of them look like this. And for this second night, we also see very poor deep sleep agreement, where literally none of the deep sleep according to the EEG headband was recorded as deep sleep by the Mi Band 8. And strangely here, the Mi Band 8 detected more deep sleep in the second half of the night, whereas typically you have more deep sleep in the first part of the night. And this is basically what I saw for all of the nights that I tested the Mi Band 8. You can see right here that there's a little deep sleep overlap with the EEG headband, but again, it's not great. And the general deep sleep patterns that the Mi Band shows are not what we would expect from a typical night's sleep. Now, light sleep agreement is mediocre, I would say, at about 56%. We can actually see that it predicted more of what was deep sleep according to the EEG device as light sleep than it predicted light sleep as light sleep. So this doesn't look very good. Now, light sleep according to the EEG headband was also predicted quite often as deep sleep at about 30% and also as REM sleep at about 13%. Now, REM sleep agreement with the EEG device is actually very poor at about 22%, and this is really not very good. Many devices struggle with REM sleep, but this is actually really bad. We see that most of what the EEG device detected as REM sleep was detected as either deep sleep or light sleep by the Mi Band 8. And here you can see what it looks like for an individual night. Now this is a similar plot to before, but now I highlighted the REM sleep according to the EEG device in red. And as is clear from this plot, there's quite little overlap between the REM sleep segments detected by the Mi Band 8 and those detected by the EEG device. Now, as I mentioned before, the Mi Band seems to show these short sleep cycle-like things, which are not like what you would see for a normal night's sleep. And we also see quite bad agreement for this second night of sleep. Now the Mi Band 8 doesn't show these weird short sleep cycles in this case, but the position of the REM segments doesn't line up well with the EEG device. This also means that we actually cannot see my real sleep cycles based on just the data from the Mi Band 8. Now you go through roughly 4 to 6 sleep cycles each night, each one starting with light sleep and deep sleep marked here in blue, and each one ending in REM sleep marked here in red. And as you can see, I likely had 1, 2, 3, 4 complete sleep cycles this night, and I would say you're not able to see this based on just the data from the Mi Band 8. And basically we see the same thing for all nights. There is just bad REM sleep agreement between the EEG device and the Mi Band. Awake time detection was okay, though also not great, with about 45% of what the EEG device detected as being awake time also being detected as awake time by the Mi Band 8. More of it was actually detected as being light sleep by the Mi Band 8. So the Mi Band 8 doesn't appear to be very sensitive in general to detecting awake moments. And we can also see that based on the individual nights. Now here I highlighted the awake moments according to the EEG device in green. And for this night there was a pretty okay agreement with the EEG device. Only this smaller awake moment was missed, but the longer awake moment was detected. And this is the general pattern I see, which we already suspected based on the percentages we were looking at. Now, the awake moments that are detected by the Mi Band 8 are generally also detected by the EEG device, but the Mi Band 8 appears to be less sensitive, so it misses some of the awake moments. And again, just to confirm, here we have the third night with one long awake moment, one medium awake moments, and two short ones. And the Mi Band 8 detects the longer awake moment, but not the medium and short ones. So overall, I would say that the sleep stage tracking of the Mi Band 8 doesn't seem very convincing so far. The total time spent in bed seems more or less correct and it detects some of the awake moments, but the sleep stages are not convincing at all, honestly. However, let's actually compare the performance of the Mi Band 8 to other devices. This graph shows you an overview of the agreement of different watches with the EEG device. Along the horizontal axis, we have the average agreement over the 4 individual sleep stages, and on the vertical axis, we have the agreement of the worst sleep stage. Now, the better the agreement, the more to the top right the device is. And the devices marked in blue were tested with polysomnography, so the gold standard in sleep stage tracking, and the others were checked with my EEG device. And as you can see, and as regular viewers will know, the devices with the best agreement so far were different Apple Watches. In this case, the Apple Watch Series 7, Series 8, Apple Watch SE, and Apple Watch Ultra. Now, other good devices include, for instance, the 8 Sleep Pod 3, but also Fitbits, Whoop straps, or our rings in the Withings Sleep Analyzer. Though the agreement is not quite as good as that of the Apple Watches. Now, normally I would now plot the Mi Band in this same plot to show you how it compares to other watches. However, the problem is that it falls outside of the range of this plot in a bad way. I actually need to expand the axis in a negative way to include it. And that is displayed right here. So I expanded the axis right here and right here. So there's actually more space to include really poor performing watches. And this is actually where the Mi Band 8, which I marked here in red, is located. And as you can see, it's doing quite poorly. It's the worst out of any watch I tested so far. And this is a bit strange to me, given that the Mi Band 6 actually did a little bit better, as you can see right here. And also a limited test I did on the Mi Band 7 right here showed that it performed better than the Mi Band 8. Now, I'm not sure if this has to do with the Chinese versus international version of the Mi Band, or that they just changed the algorithm, but this is something I want to test in the future. So if I get my hands on the international version, I hope it does at least as well as the Mi Band 6, or maybe they revert the algorithm back to an older version. And like I said, I also tested the second Mi Band 8 on the other wrist for the same exact nights, and this gave very similar results, as you can see right here. So the original Mi Band I showed you before is marked as number 1, and the new one is number 2. And as you can see, they're very close in position to each other. So based on this, I'm pretty confident that the results I've showed you so far are reliable enough at least to draw some first conclusions. So for sleep stage tracking, I simply cannot recommend the Mi Band 8. However, maybe this is a lot to ask from such a cheap watch. Still, hopefully Xiaomi can improve the algorithms or even roll back to whatever algorithm they were using for the Mi Band 6, since this seemed to be a lot better still. Now, evaluating the results for the current sleep stage algorithm that we were just looking at for the Mi Band 8, it doesn't seem completely random to me, since the awake time detection is still somewhat reliable and it also detects when you fall asleep and you wake up. But honestly, the other sleep stages are not much better than random to me. So if you're going to use the Mi Band 8 for sleep stage tracking, just focus on your total time in bed and ignore all other metrics. Now, for some people, this might already be what they're looking for in a watch. They just want to know when they fall asleep and when they wake up, and maybe some of their awake moments. So that means that there's still some value to the sleep stage tracking of the Mi Band 8, but it's basically limited to tracking your total time in bed and not much else. And therefore, I would give the sleep stage tracking of the Mi Band 8 2 out of 5 stars. Still, even with the poor sleep stage tracking, I can still recommend the Mi Band 8 for a select group of users. Now, considering the price, the Mi Band 8 does have some things going for it. It looks really nice and the interface works well too. And currently I'm actually testing 8 smartwatches under $30, and the Mi Band is so much better than most of those watches. You can't imagine the frustration I felt using some of those watches. They're sluggish, they're just unreliable, and even the time is off sometimes. Now, compared to most of those watches, the Mi Band 8 is an absolute delight to use. Of course, if I compare the Mi Band 8 to some of the more expensive watches, like some Garmin watches, the more premium Huawei watches and Apple watches, the experience and performance is way worse. However, all of these are often an order of magnitude more expensive. And I have to say, the heart rate tracking of the Mi Band 8 actually is not the worst I've seen. So based on this limited preliminary test, my personal experience, and taking into account the price, I would give the Mi Band 8 3 out of 5 stars in terms of sports and health tracking. Now, personally, if I could choose any smartwatch or smartband out there, regardless of the price, the Mi Band 8 wouldn't be close to my top picks. However, given the very low price, it can be a really good deal for some people. It really depends on what you want and what you can spend, and of course, what you plan to use the Mi Band 8 for. And again, I do have to emphasize that this was a limited first test. I could only access the low resolution heart rate data of the Chinese version of the watch, but hopefully I can test the international version soon. Additionally, I only tested the watch on myself for a limited number of days and nights, and it might perform differently on you depending on your skin tone or your gender. Still, I hope the results in this video are helpful with your decision on whether or not to get the Mi Band. Now, if you do want to buy the Mi Band 8, another device, or anything at all on Amazon for that matter, even something as small as toilet paper, and at the same time you want to support the channel, there are different affiliate and non-affiliate links in the description below. They do not cost you any extra, and some even provide a discount. Now, if your budget is a bit higher than what you would spend on a Mi Band 8, you might also be considering getting a Fitbit. In that case, you'll want to check out these videos right here. And of course, it would also really help me if you subscribe to this channel, but again, totally up to you. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching and catch you in the next video.